Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. Yeah. Rod, someone is doing it already, so you may take a seat. Okay. Wait. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are at the conclusion of 3 days of this summit on sustainable food security here at KAUST. Before we begin the final conclusions, we just have an award ceremony, very brief award ceremony to undertake. This is to recognise the fantastic science that's being done here at KAUST. You will have seen the poster sessions, the electronic poster sessions in the outside foyer, and there's really some very impressive research that is going on here, some very impressive young scientists who are involved. The selection criteria for the awards was what contribution will this research be likely to make to sustainable food security in Saudi Arabia. So when you're hearing the awards, just keep that in the back of your minds. That is the selection criteria. My beautiful assistant will be here any minute to help with the handing out of the awards. I'm going to start, we have 3 awards, first, second and third. I'm going to start with third. Third prize winner is Randa Saban for the research on rational design of Striga hermophaga specific seed germination inhibitors. So congratulations. Oh, she's not here? So this work, I think, was really impressive because with a very cheap solution, a huge increase in food production was possible in areas that were subject to this weed. Second prize was to Asil Al-Shalan. So Asil's work was on IOMAP. It is understanding the genetic variation of wild rice relatives of rice endemic to the Americas, and what they're looking for is rice that can grow in salt water. So very useful research, obviously could make a huge contribution to food security, not just in Saudi Arabia, but around the world.
I think, Asil, you said you worked together with Saula, is that correct? Okay, so we actually have two. I'll hand it over to both of you. Okay?
Thank you. Can we have a photo here, please? Come and get your photo. You're famous now. Have a photo. And first prize was to Fatima Abdul Hakim for her work on G3BP1 as a plant stress hormone. This is very interesting research in understanding some of the basic fundamental mechanisms that give plants an ability to cope with stress in a highly stressful environment, which Saudi Arabia is. So this has great promise for multiple crops in being able to improve their ability to handle stress in this environment. So well done to all the winners. One more round of applause as they go off stage. Okay, so now we're coming into the final stage, the final conclusion of this summit. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Mark Tester and Princess Mashael to present a final summary of the 3 days. Will you please welcome them to the stage?
Hello, Mark. You're frozen. Could you hear us? Okay, fantastic.
I missed a few words, but I've got a general idea. I'm back online, it seems.
Great. So as we're wrapping up, maybe I'd like to give this opportunity to you to maybe start with our declarations and essentially the main points of our recommendations before I wrap up with a few closing remarks.
Thank you very much. I mean, I've been listening to lots that's been going on in this conference, even from my sickbed here and isolation. And I've read the notes from the round tables, which were very good. And I thank everybody involved for their contributions. And I've done my best to distill these into a 2-page document with inputs from about 3 other people, Princess Mashael being one of them. Thank you. And I will share this with you in a minute. I mean, we need to make lists of problems, wish lists of solutions, and dreams of technological opportunities. But we also need to work out how bringing a lot of different approaches, taking a lot of different approaches. We need to be playing to people's economic drivers, need to play to the imperatives of governments to look after their citizens and ensure they undertake their duty of securing provision of the essentials of life to all their citizens, shelter, water, and food. And there are many, many other approaches as well. Now, we've had a very good and interesting meeting, and I really hope we're able to build on this meeting both now in the coming weeks and also next year. For our next meeting, we need to bring in more diversified representation, more intergovernmental players, economists, political scientists, sociologists, education experts, policy experts. We also need to have a broader range of technical expertise on board. I have to admit, I'm a plant scientist. I focus very much on the agricultural and agronomic aspects. But we also need to bring in experts from other aspects, other dimensions of the food sector, such as experts on labelling, experts on compostable plastics. We have SABIC here, world's biggest plastics company. The opportunities of leading, being ahead of the game in compostable plastics really must be enormous. And I'd love for us to be able to explore that, for it will massively help recycling of food waste, of which there's so much in this kingdom. Of course, we want to reduce that, but we also need to see if we can use some of that as an opportunity. We don't want to let drift ideas such as the one-gate system for regulation. I'd love to see that being implemented very, very soon. And water licensing is another big idea which has been presented in this meeting, and we need to try to see how we can help explore this further and see if we can move towards some level of implementation. So, to try to facilitate some of this, I have prepared a draft declaration, and I'm going to share the text with you, the draft text, and just highlight some of the aspects. Where are we? Draft declaration. Share. Can you see that on the screen okay? Okay. Yes?
Not yet, Mark.
Oh.
There it is.
It's coming yet, Princess Mashael?
Yeah, maybe.
It is here? Super.
It is here, but maybe we could have the full page. Perfect.
Good. Excellent. So, use an interesting to pick on, what we experience in the FAO in particular. I make no apology for that, but it might explain some of the clauses which are very general and some of the clauses which are more technical. But I would hope that this still helps us provide a statement. What I intend to do after this meeting is circulate this to all registered participants, for which we have an email, and we would also post it on our website, and I would then really encourage very actively encourage critical comments, constructively critical comments on this, and we'll try to assimilate a consensus document over these coming 1 or 2 weeks. So just highlighting some bits of it, we are committed to achieving food security for Saudi Arabia in a way that is as sustainable as reasonably achievable. And sustainable food security will require that we produce our own food when it is sensible and sustainable to do so, and diversify our food imports to account for supply chain interruptions, minimising risk. Critical is to policies and processes to use water wisely. And I point out here, at current rates of consumption, reserves will last in the order of 20 to 200. Without nutrients, when the water is depleted, there will be very little food production. Following that mantra, no water, no food. And then there are 10 points, 10 paragraphs, where we're trying to outline some of the more tangible actions to achieve these high-level outcomes. The first two are generally fairly general sorts of comments, and then I just jumped to the third one, and as I'm highlighting areas which may require more discussion and maybe slightly more less broad, but we're trying to achieve something which has broad agreement. So the third point here, establish an independent agency for measuring and monitoring inputs, production, and other aspects of the food and agriculture sector, and facilitating transparent data sharing. So we have been told that there is data, although there clearly isn't data in all aspects of the food sector, but the accessibility of that data needs to be significantly improved. And that's actually a very non-trivial task. It's one thing to have data, it's another thing to be able to compile it, organise it, and analyse it. The fourth paragraph is critical regarding water, and says in a country and region that is one of the most water stressed globally, and Saudi is definitely in the top 10 most water stressed countries in the world, we encourage policies to increase water use efficiency and to maximise value from the groundwater being used, such as by phasing in systems for charging for the real cost of water, phasing in, of course, thus supporting market-based methods for self-regulation of water use. Now, I've added in here a sentence, a regional approach for this would be ideal. This is partly because some aquifers are shared with our neighbours, although admittedly not many, but also I'm thinking with that phrase, and maybe it needs to be made more explicit, about the food markets as well. So we need to be careful not to put too many bumps in the level playing field. This water control, must be done whilst also respecting the cultural importance of existing traditions, in particular the date palm, and the need to ensure the long-term cultivation of date palms. I think this is an important extra phrase, and in fact, I would argue there's also a mirror image to this statement, that is, if we don't control the water use that is happening at the moment, we won't have water for date palms in the future, and that would be absolutely terrible. The final sentence in here is fairly, I think, acceptable. Infrastructure and processes also need to be developed. Water and renewable water, although quantitatively they're relatively minor contributions to the overall water budget, but they're small but still significant. The next sentence, I think, the next paragraph, I think, is fairly reasonable, but I do add at the end of it, plans should also be started now for the longer term future when groundwater reserves are depleted. We're thinking about when consumers stop purchasing oil, we should also be thinking about what really is going to be the landscape here when groundwater reserves are depleted. Or 2 years. The sixth paragraph is in looking at human resources. So this is universally, there's been so many mentions of these. I'm looking sideways, sorry, to my notes. I've got a pile of notes on paper from this meeting. Encouraging investment in human resource development is clearly absolutely central. Investments We need money, of course, for all of this, but the investments need to be not just made on an I wish basis, but need to be made in a very strategic and intelligent way. And, public institutions are a very important component of this. And one could argue, particularly in Saudi Arabia, public institutions can invest in and develop mission-oriented public procurement policies and standards that help unlock private investment. So we're talking about public institutions investing in their own right, investing in infrastructure, and also making investments that help a segment get started. And I think those are very important. And then the rest of the paragraph is sort of like a wish list, which I've been gleaning from the notes of various areas. And people may want to edit and make comments on that wish list. I'll just highlight the last sentence. Saudi Arabia has amazingly large centralized CO2 emitting sources. This isn't a consequence of being the world's most important provider of energy. And it would be wonderful if we could use that centralized provision of carbon dioxide. What do we need? What do plants need? What is the fundamental for the production of food? It's carbon dioxide. And so it would be great if we could actually capture that carbon dioxide, use it from these fabulous central sources to promote a controlled environment agricultural system. And this, you provide that provision, then that would encourage private investment. That's one example of public investment helping private investment. And you end up with something like you find in the Netherlands, where a third of controlled environment agriculture is occurring, a high quality controlled environment agriculture, and that was centered around a centralized CO2 emitting source from the Shell refinery. And there in Westland in the Netherlands, the government provided a centralized CO2 resource, and from that blossomed an amazing and highly profitable industry. And then conversely, we recognise the critical role of the private sector to support public efforts in improving aspects of the agri-food systems. We mentioned vocational training again in paragraph 7.3. We need a skilled local workforce, no doubt, technically skilled, as well as very good at management, IT, and so on. Pardon me, sorry. And all innovative food sectors, scientific research, and this needs to be supported at all levels, from universities to government bodies in the private sector. I heard several times the regulatory frameworks and some need for some improvements and changes in regulatory frameworks. This is put in a paragraph which is focused on food processing and production, but I think it could be broadened. But at the moment it's drafted to say develop regulatory frameworks and processes to facilitate competitive and safe food processing and production, including things like plant-based meats. The 9th paragraph encouraged food trade and overall trade policies that will encourage producers and consumers to utilise available resources in an economically sound and sustainable manner. I think that's probably okay. And then the 10th one, almost independent but still interrelated comments in this 10th paragraph. One is to encourage efforts to develop systems for traceability and measures of environmental footprints of food. You can't control what you're not measuring. This was said earlier today, I think by Matt McCabe. And this includes to try to improve sustainability. We need to develop sustainability indices. And this is important for traders, it's important for retailers, it's important for the consumer. And related to that is systems to help consumers make informed decisions. And then these processes of traceability and labelling really does help reduce food waste. And I've ended here with a sentence that food waste is a major issue in Kingdom and a wide range of approaches are needed to reduce. The final paragraph I think I shall leave for a minute. It's the final take-home paragraph. But Princess Mashael, I think we agreed that it might be good at this stage to invite comments on any or all of this document.
I think if there are any urgent comments, we'd love to welcome them now. If not, maybe we'll give everyone here the opportunity to take a look at the document at home and within the next 2 weeks sort of get better, more detailed text at the end of it. So thank you very much for that, Professor Mark. And I think specifically some of the comments on the last paragraph are quite near and dear to me. So if you could give that an extra look, because sometimes we try to think of things in a disjointed manner. I think one quick comment that I could give you right here and now, since I have the floor, is that maybe we should say all stakeholders and not only specify them to the food sector, since the level of ambition and I think interoperability goes well beyond the food sector. So thank you very much for that, Professor Mark. And maybe I'll take this opportunity to sort of remind us all of why we're here today. Each and every one of us, or at least myself included, why do we do what we do, and why should we aim to do so with sincerity and commitment? It's mainly because it lends itself as an opportunity for disproportionate impact through mindfulness. Mindfulness to our most vulnerable, in considerate, safe food and clean air for our children, the impacts and implications that we were reminded by our colleague, Mr. Ramadan, on the pocket of the farmer, safe and less harsh environments for our elderly in a time of a changing, warming climate, to our vulnerable flora and fauna that long occupied these blessed lands before we ever appeared as humans. Mindfulness to future generations. We come from a culture of responsible actors, of recent responsibility and action, I believe. I'm 35, and I can recall within one generation removed, my grandparents, instilling a lot of these main pillars. They were mainly coming out of a community-driven set of priorities as opposed to individualistic. The neighbors shared their walls with one another in the heart of our old towns. Let us recapture their wisdom and replicate the blessings they showered us with by ensuring that such fertile environment not only exists, but allows our youth to thrive and excel from where we left off. Mindfulness to our footprint in our resources, in our atmosphere, biosphere, geosphere, on ecosystems. I was reminded of this recently in a stroll that I did in a national park in Asir, and equally in the first day of our gathering, that how much easier it is to ruin an ecosystem than it is to restore one. We heard about the impacts from a barrage of pressures that were had on our very precious arar trees, our juniper trees. While spotting invasive Barbary fig, or barshumi in Arabic, that migrated with populations of baboons from Taif to Asir, dotting the cliff in abundance, we equally saw how, unfortunately, unsuccessful we've been at all of our attempts to address salvaging the populations of our arar trees and safeguarding them. Mindfulness to our weight as Saudi. Depending on how you look at it, Saudi is at the heart of the globe and is of a considerable size and a population and has a very complex and rich economic sets of assets, with what we should be seeing it as complementary priorities as opposed to competing with one another. To leave an undeniable, scalable impact, we need to remind ourselves as individuals that we're operating from a landmass of the size of a continent. My grandfather used to say this all the time, Yubuy baladkum qara, our country is a continent. With a variety of richness of endowments, cultures, climates, being at the very core trade routes and home to the two holy mosques, had opened us as a melting pot for centuries before a university like KAUST has existed. We only need to look at the Greek influence of statues in Al-Faw to remind ourselves of how long that heritage has been. And last but definitely not least, mindfulness to one another's earnest efforts, building from the place where everyone else has left us off. Progress is cumulative. As participants in this forum, in all varieties of representation, myself in the most dear hat that I'm wearing of AEON Collective, a civil society, but equally government, the private sector, universities, and importantly at KAUST, research institutions. I think we should honor that and the opportunity granted to us today by the efforts of our colleagues at CDA. So I'm not going to name everyone, but most definitely Mark, who's been soldiering through this with COVID, so we really thank you for your effort. Rod, Rebecca, among many others, Paul, for coming all the way from Australia to take part in this. We should not only be speaking our gratitude, I believe we should be showing it with action. May your efforts be honored by ensuring that this is a turning point for action on food security in Saudi Arabia. And I thank you all for listening to us and for humbly looking at my face coming at the stage time and time again. So thank you all for being with us till this hour.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Princess Mashael, so much. Fantastic leadership all the way through, from really months ago to all the way to the end. And from what I could read of that declaration, it's a very solid document that really summarises all of the work that's been done by all of you over the last 3 days. And I hope it's an inspiring and consequential document that informs Saudi policy and Saudi action as it goes forward. We started this 3-day event with a welcome from Professor Rod Wing, and we will finish again with a presentation from Rod Wing, who will thank you all for being here and send us on our way. So thank you, Rod.
Okay, we're at the end, so I'm the last band to play. So it's anyway. This has been a fantastic 3 days. It's really, I've gone out in the country for the past couple of years and met a lot of you already, but now I've met new friends and established some new relationships and strong bonds, with the same goal in mind: sustainable food security and protecting the environment. Again, how can we feed our world and protect our environment without destroying our world? So let's work hard together, and I really hope that we can follow up on many of the declarations and ideas that came out of this summit. And I want to thank you all for attending and hanging in there the whole time. It's been a long few days, but it's been definitely worth it. So with that, I have a whole list of people that I need to thank. So please help me in thanking everyone. So I guess our first thank you goes to Rebecca Waller. I already thanked her again. So, Rebecca, yeah, I think you guys have to come up here. You guys, Rebecca's worked, she's only been here about 6 months, and we asked her when she came, do you want to run the Food Security Summit for us? And she said, sure. And she's already got gray hairs, and she's from this. But I think you can stay up. You want to stay up here with us? Maybe we'll get a photograph. But thank you so much, Rebecca. And you guys have all gotten emails from her. We also want to thank Emma and Robin for the graphic design. I mean, we've had some really, look at all this. This is absolutely stunning graphic design. So these folks are not here right now, but we really want to thank them for all their attention to the details. I mean, I turned in my slides yesterday and an hour before, and they already were modified because they didn't take into account my color blindness, so they helped me out with that one. Okay, we also want to thank Andrea for her communication and social media for really sending out all the emails and sending out all, keeping us on social media. I think there's been a number of news articles that have been coming out in Arabic as well as in English on the meeting. So we have a wonderful, our center operations team, and this is led by Anna Rautek here. and we want to thank her and the whole team in making all of this possible. And in particular, I want to ask Dahlia to come up. Is Dahlia here? Okay, Dahlia, Melanie, Samira, Luis, Suja, and Anna. So come up and join Rebecca on the stage. These things are heavy. Oh, you guys are going to get, okay. Okay, Luis. Very much. Please. No? Okay. We also want to thank all of our amazing volunteers from the CDA, our students, postdocs, scientists, and staff members, especially. And we're going to ask Maureen, Constance, Rodwal, Lamise, and Fatima to please come to the stage. Thank you all so much for your tireless efforts. You guys all stay up. We're going to get a big photo. Take a picture, everybody, please. Y'all get up here. Okay. Thank you all. And we also like to thank the great support of the teams at KAUST who worked hard the last couple of days, very, very hard for us. The campus services, security, Tamimi, Coastline, KAUST Print Shop, the AV and IT teams, and the media teams here in the auditorium today. So thanks everyone. And this is the good team. Thank you all. I appreciate it. Okay, meeting's over. And thank you all. And let's work hard together to really work as a whole team to promote food security in the country. And we're really excited to be working with everyone. So thank you very much. Thank you, Mark. Mark Tester. I didn't thank Mark Tester. Thank you, Mark. And everyone.
Okay, then.
Did I miss anybody?
Yes, I also want to say a word. Thank you, Rod, and thank you, Mark. Thanks for leading this center. We are proud to be part of the CDA. And we're looking forward to the next Food Security Summit, hopefully next year. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna. Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you all. Safe